was an ordinary night shift at Luna Cafe, a small, cozy coffee shop tucked away in the heart of downtown. The kind of place where regulars linger over their drinks, chatting with the baristas like old friends. But for me, it was just another exhausting night of serving drinks, preparing pastries, and listening to the monotonous hum of the espresso machine. My name is Isla, and I've been working at Luna Cafe for over a year now. I've seen all kinds of people come and go, but none like him. The clock on the wall ticked past 11 p.m., and the usual evening crowd had thinned. There was a lonely man at the far end of the counter, hunched over his coffee, staring into the dark corners of the cafe. He wasn't like the other regulars who came for comfort. This man had an unsettling presence about him. Something cold, something distant. I didn't expect him to speak to me when he finally did, but he did, and it sent a chill down my spine. "I'd like a special drink," he said, his voice smooth but cold, like a distant echo. I looked up from the register, meeting his eyes for the first time. He had deep-set eyes, dark and piercing, and his face was partially obscured by a 5 o'clock shadow. He wore a black jacket and kept his hands folded on the counter as if waiting for something to happen. "A special drink?" I repeated, trying to mask the unease creeping up my spine. "What kind of drink?" He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice so no one else could hear. "Something that will make you think. Something that will make you see things differently." I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease flood over me, but I smiled, trying to play it off. "We have plenty of unique drinks, sir. Maybe I can recommend something." He shook his head, his lips curling into a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "No. I want you to make something. Just for me. Something no one else would order. And I'll know if it's right. You'll know too." His words, though polite, felt too intense, like there was something beneath them. I couldn't put my finger on it, but his demeanor was different from any customer I had ever served before. He was commanding, almost as if he knew exactly what he wanted, and it unsettled me. "All right," I said slowly, still unsure. "Let me try something." I turned and started to prepare a drink I hadn't made before, a custom concoction with a mix of citrus, coffee, and spices. I wasn't sure if I was doing it to please him, or simply because I couldn't back down from the challenge. I finished preparing the drink, pouring it into a glass with a swirl of ice and a final garnish of fresh mint. When I handed it to him, he didn't immediately drink it. Instead, he looked at the drink, then back at me, his eyes scrutinizing. "It's perfect." His voice was soft, but there was something chilling about his tone. He took the glass from my hand and sipped it, nodding in satisfaction. "You'll start to feel it soon enough," he said, his gaze still locked onto mine. Before I could respond, he took his coat and stood up. "Thank you, Isla. I'll be back," he added cryptically, before walking out of the cafe, leaving me standing there, wondering if I had just served something far more than a drink. The rest of the night passed in a blur, but my thoughts kept returning to him. Who was that man? What did he mean by, "You'll start to feel it"? His words kept echoing in my mind. I didn't believe in the idea of a mind-altering drink, but there was something about the whole interaction that didn't sit right with me. Around 2 a.m., the cafe began to close. I was cleaning up, wiping down the counters, and preparing to leave when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Jake, my best friend and the cafe's security guard. "Just a heads up, Isla. There's something strange going on in the alley. Someone's out there, lurking around. Be careful." I paused, my hand hovering over the phone. Strange. The alley behind the cafe was usually quiet. I'd heard stories about it being a hotspot for shady activities, but I didn't think much of it. Still, Jake's message made me uneasy. I quickly sent a reply. "I'm heading out soon. Thanks for the heads up." But as I was about to turn off the lights and lock the door, I heard a soft tap against the cafe window. I turned, startled, and saw a shadow moving just outside the glass. My heart skipped a beat as I stepped closer to the window. It was the same man, the one who had ordered the strange drink. He was standing just outside the cafe, his back to the window, but he was looking around, almost like he was waiting for something, or someone. His posture was stiff, and his movements were deliberate. Then, as if sensing my gaze, he turned and looked directly into the cafe window. His eyes met mine, and for a split second, I saw that same unsettling smile on his face. It was as if he knew I was watching him. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Without thinking, I locked the door and turned off the lights, my mind racing. What was going on? Why was he out there looking at me like that? As I stood there, frozen with fear, I realized something. I hadn't served him the drink just now. That had happened hours ago. But why was he here again? Why did it feel like he was waiting for something? I needed answers. The next day, the cafe felt quieter than usual. The lingering unease from last night's encounter with the mysterious man sat heavily in my chest. I tried to push it aside, focusing on my work, but it was impossible to ignore the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. I hadn't seen him again, but his face, repeated over and over in my mind. As the day passed, I kept my eyes on the alley, half expecting him to appear, but there was nothing. No sign of him, no strange occurrences, but the silence in the cafe was unsettling, more so than usual. Even my customers seemed quieter, more reserved. It felt like the entire place was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Around 7 p.m., the night shift started again, and I found myself working alongside Jake. We didn't talk much, but I could tell he was still worried about the strange figure he had seen in the alley. We had briefly discussed it the night before, but neither of us could make sense of what was going on. "Do you think it's just a coincidence?" I asked, unable to keep my voice steady as I glanced out the window. Jake leaned over the counter, his eyes scanning the street. "Maybe. But you've got to admit, it's too weird to just ignore." I nodded, but my mind kept drifting back to that moment when the man had looked at me through the window. It was like he knew something I didn't, like he was playing some twisted game with me. That night, around midnight, I was alone in the cafe again. Jake had left early, and the only sound in the cafe was the steady hum of the espresso machine. I was cleaning up, wiping down the counter, when I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. My heart skipped a beat, and I immediately looked toward the window. The same man was standing there again, just outside the cafe, staring in. I froze, my pulse quickening as I stared at him. His face was partially obscured by the shadows, but I could still see his eyes, those dark, piercing eyes, locked onto mine. It was as if he was waiting for me to react, waiting for me to make the first move. I hesitated, unsure of what to do. I had to confront him. I couldn't just ignore it again. He had been watching me, and now it felt like it was my turn. I walked cautiously to the door and unlocked it, stepping out into the night air. The temperature had dropped, and I pulled my jacket tighter around me as I approached him. "You again," I said, trying to sound calm, but my voice betrayed me. It was shaky, filled with uncertainty. "What do you want from me?" He smiled, a slow, deliberate grin that sent a chill through me. "I want you to understand," he said softly, his voice low and almost hypnotic. "I want you to know the truth." I took a step back, my mind racing. "The truth? What truth?" He stepped closer, his presence intimidating, but there was no malice in his eyes, just a cold, calculating emptiness. "You're not just some random person, Isla. You're part of something bigger." I took another step back, my heart pounding in my chest. What do you mean? What do you want from me? His eyes gleamed with a twisted satisfaction as he stepped back, his smile never fading. I'm not going to hurt you, Isla. Not yet. But I want you to understand that you're part of something. I swallowed hard, unsure of whether I should run or stay. The sense of dread in the air was suffocating, and I knew that I wasn't going to get the answers I wanted from him. You're not alone in this game, Isla. His voice was almost a whisper now, and for a moment, I thought I heard a laugh, dark, mocking. The people you trust, they're just pawns, just like you. His words were like a punch to the gut. I had no idea what he was talking about, but the more he spoke, the more I realized that he wasn't just playing some mind game with me. He was planting seeds, disturbing thoughts in my mind. And I was beginning to question everything. Without another word, he turned and walked into the alley, disappearing into the darkness. I stood there, stunned, trying to make sense of what had just happened. What did he mean by part of something bigger? Who was he? And why was he targeting me? The rest of the night felt like a blur. I locked up the cafe and headed home. But sleep didn't come easy. The man's words haunted me, his cryptic message digging deeper into my mind. I kept wondering if I was just imagining things, if maybe it was all just some twisted game. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't. There was something real, something terrifying, lurking just beneath the surface. I spent the next day at home, trying to distract myself, but I couldn't. The feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. I couldn't focus. I couldn't think straight. The man had planted doubts in my mind, doubts about the people I trusted, about the world I thought I knew. It was around 3 a.m. when I received an anonymous message on my phone. The message was simple, just a single line of text. You're next. They'll come for you too. I stared at the message, my fingers frozen above the screen. My blood ran cold as I read it again. This wasn't some prank. This wasn't just some twisted joke. It was a warning. The next few days passed in a haze. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every moment felt like I was waiting for something terrible to happen. The message I had received on my phone, "You're next. They'll come for you too," kept echoing in my mind. The man, the watcher, was not just a figment of my imagination. He was real, and his influence was slowly creeping into my life, distorting everything I thought I knew. I had tried to reach out to the police, but they brushed it off. I knew I didn't have enough proof to make them believe me. No one understood what I was going through. How could they? How could anyone understand the constant feeling of being watched? The constant fear that someone was always lurking just out of sight. I had made an appointment with Detective John Carter, a friend of Jake's who had been investigating some missing persons cases in the area. He had agreed to meet with me, but the more I thought about it, the less I was convinced that he could help. The man had been playing me like a puppet, twisting my mind until I didn't know what was real anymore. And now, I was being dragged deeper into his sick game. The meeting with Detective Carter was scheduled for 10 a.m., but by the time I arrived at his office, I was already late. I hadn't been able to shake the overwhelming sense of dread that had followed me everywhere I went. The cafe, my apartment, the streets. It didn't matter where I was. I felt like I was constantly being hunted. I entered the building trying to push aside the feeling of panic that was starting to rise in my chest. The detective's office was on the 3rd floor, and I had to take the stairs because the elevator was out of order. Each step felt like a slow march toward an inevitable confrontation. I had so many questions, but I was afraid of what the answers might be. When I finally reached Detective Carter's office, I knocked lightly on the door. His voice called from inside, inviting me in. "Isla, good to see you. Come in, have a seat." He was sitting behind his desk, flipping through a pile of papers. He looked up and gave me a half smile. "How are you holding up?" I sat down across from him, my hands trembling in my lap. I didn't know how to answer him. How could I explain that my entire life had been turned upside down by a man who wasn't just a stranger? I had to get to the bottom of this, but I didn't know where to start. "I'm not okay, detective," I said, my voice low. "I think I'm being stalked. There's this man. He's been following me. He knows things about me that he shouldn't. And now, I think he's playing some kind of game with me." Detective Carter's expression hardened as I spoke, and he set the papers aside. "Who is this man, Isla? Do you have any idea?" I hesitated, trying to gather my thoughts. "I don't know his name, but I've seen him before. He's been in the cafe. He's been watching me, and I think he's been in my apartment too. He knows things about me that he shouldn't." "What do you mean by things he shouldn't know?" Carter asked, leaning forward slightly. I swallowed hard, the memory of the man's words flashing in my mind. "He knows where I've been, who I've talked to, things I haven't even told anyone. He's always one step ahead." Detective Carter nodded slowly, but there was something in his eyes that made me feel uneasy. He didn't say anything at first. He just sat there, looking at me like he was weighing his options. "I've heard of cases like this before," he said, his voice low. "But usually, the person being stalked doesn't realize they're being manipulated until it's too late." I frowned, feeling a lump rise in my throat. "Manipulated? What do you mean?" Carter sighed and leaned back in his chair. "The person stalking you, this man, whoever he is, he's not just trying to intimidate you. He's playing a mind game, making you question your reality. He's toying with you, seeing how far he can push you before you break." I felt my stomach drop. "So, he's not just a stalker. He's playing a twisted game with me?" "Exactly," Carter said, his expression hardening. "And the worst part is, we don't know his endgame. He could be trying to break you mentally, make you doubt your own sanity, or he could have something much darker planned." I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. I had been right all along. He wasn't just stalking me. He was manipulating me. But why? What did he want from me? "I need you to be careful, Isla," Carter continued, his voice grave. "This man is dangerous. He's already shown he can manipulate you, and he's not going to stop until he gets what he wants." The rest of the conversation was a blur. I told him everything I could about the man, the strange things he had said, the cryptic notes, and the chilling games he had been playing with my mind. But no matter what I said, Carter didn't seem convinced. He didn't have enough evidence. He couldn't act on mere suspicion. As I left his office, I felt a sense of hopelessness settle over me. The police weren't going to help. No one could help me. The man was still out there, and he was always watching. That night, after I finished my shift at the cafe, I went home and locked the door behind me. But sleep was impossible. The shadows seemed to stretch longer than usual, and I kept hearing sounds coming from the hallway outside my room. Each creak of the floorboards felt like a warning. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for something to happen. My phone buzzed. It was a message. "I know where you are." The message was anonymous, but I didn't need to ask who it was from. The Watcher had found me again. The following days felt like a blur. Each passing minute felt like a countdown, like something terrible was going to happen. But I didn't know when. The fear that I had been living with now consumed me, tightening its grip with every hour. I couldn't shake the feeling that the man, the Watcher, was always close, lurking in the corners of my mind, always watching, always waiting. I hadn't seen him in person since that last encounter, but his presence haunted me. The message he sent me, "I know where you are," only confirmed what I already feared. He was never far, and if I didn't do something, he would come for me again. But I couldn't do this alone anymore. I had to find a way out. That night, I called Detective Carter again. I couldn't wait any longer. I needed answers. I needed protection. When he answered, I could hear the weariness in his voice. But there was something else there too. Concern. "Isla, what's going on?" he asked immediately. "You sound different." "I can't take it anymore," I said, my voice shaking. "I need your help. I need you to do something. Anything, before it's too late. I know he's out there. He's not stopping. He's playing some sick game with me. I've been looking into the case." Carter's voice became more serious. "There's something you need to know, Isla. Something I should have told you sooner." I felt my stomach churn with dread. "What is it?" I demanded, my heart racing. "What's happening?" Carter took a deep breath. "The man you've been describing, his name is Marcus Sloan. He's connected to a string of disappearances from years ago." The air in the room seemed to freeze. My mind couldn't process his words at first. "What do you mean disappearances?" I whispered. "He was involved in the abduction of several women around the city. They were never found, Isla. He was the prime suspect, but there was never enough evidence to charge him." My breath caught in my throat. Marcus Sloan. The name sounded familiar now. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had seen it in the news, years ago. But I never connected it to this man. The man who had been haunting me for weeks. "He's been watching you, Isla, because you're somehow connected to his past." Carter continued, his voice low. "He's not just after you. He's after something else. I can feel it." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. Connected to his past? What did he mean? Why me? What did I have to do with Marcus Sloan and the women who had disappeared? I had to get to the bottom of this. My entire life had been turned upside down because of this man, and I couldn't let him keep controlling me. But as I sat there, trying to piece together the puzzle, I realized something terrifying. The game he had been playing with me wasn't just a mind game. It was much darker than that. The knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. My heart dropped. I didn't need to ask who it was. I slowly stood up, my legs shaking beneath me, and went to the door. But just before I opened it, I heard something else. A faint scraping sound. I froze. The noise came from behind the door. It was like someone was dragging something heavy across the floor. A shiver ran down my spine. He was here. I grabbed my phone and tried to dial 911, but my fingers were trembling too much to press the numbers. Before I could react, the door handle turned. In an instant, I opened the door and found no one standing there. But as I stepped out into the hallway, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A shadow in the corner, standing motionless. I squinted, trying to make out the figure in the dim light. And then, I heard his voice. Low, cold, almost too calm. "You're still playing, aren't you?" It was Marcus Sloan. He was standing at the far end of the hallway, his eyes locking onto mine. His grin, wide, twisted, predatory, was almost unbearable to look at. I froze. My mind screamed at me to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I was paralyzed by fear. "You thought you could escape me, Isla, but you're wrong." His voice was soft, mocking. "You're already parts of this, you always have been." I shook my head, trying to push the words out of my mind. "Why me?" I asked, the question escaping my lips before I could stop it. "What do you want from me?" He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving mine. "I want you to see the game for what it really is. I've been planning this for years, Isla. You were always going to be part of it. My breath quickened as he advanced, his footsteps slow but deliberate. You're not the first and you won't be the last. You just need to play your part. I backed away, my heart racing. Number. You're lying. I'm not part of this. But as I turned, I heard a sharp click from behind me. The door slammed shut, locking itself as if the very walls were closing in on me. There was no escape, no way out. He was close now. His fingers were outstretched, reaching toward me, and I could feel his breath on the back of my neck. But just as his hand brushed my shoulder, the lights flickered and went out completely, plunging the hallway into darkness. I screamed. When the lights came back on, Marcus was gone. There was no trace of him, no sign that he had ever been there. I stood frozen, shaking, my body drenched in cold sweat. The silence was deafening, but the pressure remained. I bolted for the door and ran to the street. I didn't care about anything else. I couldn't stay there anymore. I was trapped, stuck in a game that I couldn't escape. But even as I ran, I knew the truth. Marcus Sloan was still out there, and he wouldn't stop until he got what he wanted. And I was already part of his game.